Hey, welcome back to the Hope and Mom and Dad podcast. This is episode 20. I can't believe we've reached this many episodes. This podcast is all about IVF, infertility, and everything related to fertility awareness. And we're just trying to raise awareness about it and talk about it a bit more, make it more normal. How are you, Fuzz?
Really, really tired.
I feel like that's all we ever say, but it's true. We're always tired.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to produce a podcast, put it all together and whatever. So like on top of like being busy anyway, is not complaining. I'm just I'm a bit deflated. Obviously we've had rubbish news lately and stuff, so there's not anything to get really excited about at the moment. So
yeah, no news for us, so it's a bit like meh.
But that's just part of everything, isn't it? Can't be like awesome and exciting all the time.
Exactly. So yeah, we haven't got much news. I have had a busy time at work. You've had a busy time working for yourself. How is everybody else? I hope you're all okay and doing well listening. One thing I'm happy about is that it's autumn, and I really like this season because it's like cozy, you can get snuggly, and yeah, it's just one of my favorite seasons, so I'm glad.
I love that too, but I'm also really gutted because I can't really work properly. I do a lot of family portraits and stuff this time of year.
Yeah.
I probably could, but I haven't even thought about it because I don't know what people's reactions are going to be like, and yeah, I don't know. It's just...
Normally you take advantage of all the colours changing. You're very autumnal today in your t-shirt.
Yeah.
Rusty.
That's most of my wardrobe.
Yeah.
Is that anyway?
Matches your head. Your auburn hair. For those of you who are not watching but listening. Fuzz is
I gave myself a haircut as well. I don't know if you can tell everyone.
Like a Celtic redhead.
You'd only be able to see if you're watching.
Yeah.
You'd only be able to see if you can see, obviously. But yeah, it was pretty bad. And then a couple of days later, it kind of just passable, I think.
Your hair, you grow into it. Yeah. I think that's
But
normal.
I really messed it up.
I know that my hairdresser will probably hate me because since lockdown, I've just been trimming my ends myself. So they're probably wonky, but I don't care. No one seems to have noticed. So hopefully I'm getting away with it. At least to stay fresh.
You going to tell everyone about the guest we've got on today?
Yeah, this week we had a really great guest, Sandy Christiansen, who is a fertility coach. So a different angle that we normally come from.
If you don't know what a fertility coach is, don't worry about it. I didn't either, and this episode explains that very clearly.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty interesting and potentially helpful for people. Because at first, when Becky said fertility coach, I went, who is trying to get money off you? Like as in providing a service that isn't valuable and all that kind of stuff. But I am convinced. I've turned, listen, it was really awesome to hear. So like if you're like me and you're like, but you're probably not. If you're listening, you're probably like, anything I can do, I'll do, and wherever. But from a cynical point of view, I was skeptical. Yeah. And then I'm fully convinced, turned around.
Good.
Loved it.
Yeah, so that's what the podcast is this week, but also it's worth mentioning, if you're listening and you're up to date, this week and this month is Baby Loss Awareness Week and month. So it's a huge time in the trying to conceive community where people are talking about baby loss, infant loss, miscarriage, and there's a wave of light later on this week. In fact, it might be tomorrow. I'm not very in the know, and maybe you're not either. But definitely worth checking out some Instagram pages. I've been trying to share them around, and possibly if that's something you've experienced, which I'm really sorry if you have, but if it is, then perhaps you might like to speak to a fertility coach about your next steps and ways forward. So this might just be the episode for you, and I hope everyone's doing okay, because it can be a heavy time if that's what you've experienced. So send in lots of hugs. So yeah, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode with Sandy. Happy listening. So hi Sandy, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. It's a slightly different angle than we sometimes do so far. And you are a specialist in the field of fertility and currently working as a fertility coach.
Correct. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that and you and what you were up to?
Sure. So I trained as an embryologist and I worked as an embryologist in IVF for 10 years and quite recently made the move into coaching. And I'm currently supporting clients through both sort of mentoring them through their IVF treatments, so through a cycle, because obviously that's a little bit my expertise, but also a couple of my clients are sort of pre-IVF and it's guiding them a bit more through the sort of emotional aspects of struggling with infertility, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing that you're into and that you're doing, because obviously it is, like you mentioned, the emotional side there, the emotional toil, I'm going to say, the toil and the kind of stresses that go through fertility treatment when you're having it are a lot. And I think it's a common thing that fertility clinics offer counselling, but I don't think in the NHS in particular anyway, they necessarily offer it to everyone, more so if you ask or if you've been through something particularly traumatic. So then for other people who are interested in counselling anyway, or might have experienced it in their past for other reasons, might then be a bit lost because they don't know, other counsellors might not be specialists like you are.
Well, I think the coaches aren't necessarily new, but I think it might be hard for people to find us. Yeah. And that's just one of those hurdles. And I think there's a lot of sort of an open dialogue now about raising awareness, both for infertility, but also sort of infertility support. I worked in the NHS and we did have a counsellor, and I think sessions were only offered to those who actually needed or had donor services, because that was a requirement by the HFEA. So they weren't necessarily offered free to people who might have needed that emotional support. And I think there's a bigger focus on it now. There have been a few studies that have highlighted it in actual like medical journals. So there have been published scientific papers saying that this is actually, it's a big thing, and you've got your patients who are going through their fertility treatments, but simultaneously going through emotional struggles that, one paper linked it to similar stress, which is caused with people who have cancer diagnosis, for example. So there is a lot going on for people who are struggling with infertility, and I think there's definitely a sort of gap in the treatment there, and I think that's the gap that coaches like me are trying to fill.
Yeah, it's really important work. I think that study that you've just mentioned as well about likening the mental and emotional struggles that people go through with fertility to cancer patients. I've read or heard about that before, and it's quite intense, really. I knew that it was difficult for us and we were having a hard time, but when I heard that, I was like, oh, so it's kind of common and it's normal. It kind of gives you that bit of validation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to ask, I'm probably a bit loud there for the listeners, sorry. So you, obviously you and Becky have been talking a little bit. I'm kind of fresh into the conversation. So I might ask some questions that you might have already told Becky already. But that's just me. I like to do everything like naively and fresh-faced into it all, because it helps kind of, it helps, I think. So, can I just ask, when you worked for the NHS, can you just kind of bullet point it, like your role and what that included,
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So I was employed as a senior at the time. So my role was performing all of the methods and actual techniques that we use as embryologists, and training our junior members of staff as well. So in terms of what we did in the lab, it was everything from sperm prep before treatment, it was collecting the eggs. So we sit on the other side of the theatre and we look through test tubes under a microscope and we actually look for the eggs. And then it was fertilizing them, both with IVF or with ICSI, transferring them for embryo transfer, assessment every day, grading the embryos, calling patients, letting them know quality and things like that, freezing them. So everything that goes behind the doors of the lab, that's
the magical mystery as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So everyone that anyone in the UK that's having IVF treatment on the NHS, am I right in thinking they're under the care of a consultant who's kind of like, is that right? And then like there's a team of everyone else, which includes you people. Or is that not true at all?
It is, but
it's more of an administration thing.
I think it's tricky. It depends on which clinic you go to, how large the clinic is and how small the clinic is. Because ideally you would want to have one main consultant that you see throughout everything, but that's often not the case. Mm-hmm. So you might see a consultant for an initial consultation who comes up with your treatment plan, and then your next appointment might be a nurse just fulfilling the details of that and telling you how to administer your drugs. You might not actually see that consultant again. He might not be the one doing your egg collection. He might not be the one.
Or she.
Or she.
It's usually me that does that. That's right.
And might not be the one doing your embryo transfer. So they would still be your main consultant, and they would be.
But ultimately, you have like a team of people.
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
And on paper, a consultant is in charge, but
correct,
kind
yes.
of, but
absolutely.
like everyone sort of picks up the slack here and there, and it's kind of
putting puzzle pieces together, not picking up slack, but yeah.
Well, I don't know.
suppose it's like any treatment that requires a surgery, because essentially that's what couples go through, the women in particular. It's a theatre procedure, isn't it? So if you went through any treatment, you'd have a consultant who sees you and they're the specialist in that, but they might not be the one to perform the procedure.
Correct.
And then also you'd have anaesthetists that come in and nurses that support the...
But I was just kind of interested in the sort of relationship between a patient. Patient comes in, we want to have kids, we need IVF. They see, like, it's, like with everything, it's kind of like you have like a over figure at the top, consultant, but generally it's a lot of people underneath that consultant that you kind of work with and speak to and do stuff.
I think, Sandy, you were like a key person in it all, obviously, because without an embryologist, IVF cannot happen. And
it is a very much a team sport, I was going to say, but no, it is. You have to work as a team, and everyone is equally important, honestly. Like, everyone is necessary.
So you like, how did you become, like, I'm just interested in like you as a person, and like how you became like into the job that you do, like, is it something you've always wanted to do, or is it kind of like you were science based and then sort of...
Do you mean coaching now, or before, when I got into embryology?
Yeah, embryology. I was going to talk about that, and then basically I was just going to say, and we could focus on how you got, you transitioned from that to where you are today, because I don't know, I just want to know. I'm just interested.
No, absolutely. I honestly, when so I went to university in Sweden, and I did not know that I could, with my degree, become an embryologist. And I mean, my first boss would remember and be able to recite this, the same description. I happened to be on a sort of post-university gap year and was applying for jobs when I was in Thailand. Because I was like, I'm about to go home soon, and I don't have a job to return to. And I found this ad, and I thought it just sounded amazing. And I happened to know someone who was doing a master's or a bachelor's project in the clinic. So he was kind enough to put in a good word for me, because we had worked together at a blood lab, as that was my first job when I graduated from uni. And so, luckily that got my foot in the door. And from the first few weeks. I mean, it was just, I was amazed by everything that went on in the lab.
Yeah.
And my boss and my senior, they were both so passionate, and it was really contagious. And I was just like, yes, this is awesome. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of people seem to sort of separate science from like emotion and feeling. Like I feel like this is one field in particular. Well, I think most things are sort of a combination of both, like wellness and mental well-being and science. But in this case, with fertility issues, it's a crazy, like, hyperbolic. It's just like loads of science and loads of heartache and stress and grief and joy, hopefully, for some people.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how, like, you as a scientist, which people think of as very data driven, science driven, not well,
a
maybe
nerd.
not. Yeah, but like,
I'm totally a science nerd. It's absolutely okay. I think people sometimes do see us as like sort of introverted. We're just sort of in there in the dark lab, like working at microscopes and doing our own thing. But because I mean, IVF in particular, it is such a team-based job. You have to be good at communicating. You have to you have to work well with others, essentially. And so it's a little bit more than just the sort of like nerd in the corner. And then, yeah, of course, with having to occasionally convey, bad news to some of our patients, we get a lot of empathy training and things like that. And so we're not just the weird nerdy people in the background. We do have a lot of patient contact as well, and so that's a very important part of the job.
Yeah, I think that's the call that's a really important kind of milestone in the IVF process. That call from an embryologist that says, "Oh, we collected this many eggs, and this is we're going to keep."
So that's from an embryologist, not the consultant, or
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I got to turn these notifications. Yeah, I thought. See, I'm learning now.
Yeah.
I thought a consultant. I thought all the news would go, because I've had operations on my nose for things and whatever, and it's always gone back to the consultant, and then their secretary or whatever passes on news, which is but in this case, obviously, you get the people at the lab themselves, people like yourself. So now you're a coach, and do you compare the two jobs? Prefer one? Do you miss aspects of one compared to the other, or are you like, do you want to talk about the differences between the two and adjusting to them?
I do occasionally miss the lab, because I did just find it amazing. But in general, I am very happy doing what I'm doing now, and I feel like the sort of patient support, but now clients for me, they're not my patients anymore, was just a very important part of the job for me. And I did kind of get to a point where I felt like it wasn't necessarily provided as enough as it should have been. So that's just the kind of service that I'm trying to give people now.
Is this like a popular thing in other places in the world? Is it like a established kind of thought of? Because you said earlier that you saw a gap that needed filling, kind of thing, but you are still trying to work on how people can find you, because people might not know it's an actual thing. But I just wondered, in other parts of the world, is it kind of established? And
I don't know, to be honest. I think I'm still kind of fairly new to the whole marketing bit. There are a lot of coaches out there. I think I'm one of few that has the embryology background. I know there are a few in Australia, but a lot of the other coaches or mentors out there are a bit more on the mind-body side of things, and might not necessarily be the support throughout a treatment, but possibly if you've been struggling to conceive, come to me, and we'll work on how to make you feel better about your journey, for example. And those, I think they are potentially a bit more well known. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think, and being an embryologist beforehand gives you such a perfect perspective on the whole process as well.
Thank
But
you.
I mean, so I guess you sort of, everyone's always learning and developing and stuff. So you've got the science nailed.
Inside information on all the processes and everything.
Exactly.
I would feel a little, I don't know, if Becky said, I'm seeing a fertility coach, I think Becky mentioned you as a fertility coach. And the first thing I said was, is she a scientist?
You said, is she a doctor?
Yeah, because I felt, and this is just me thinking out loud, no disrespect to people without medical degrees or anything, or science degrees or whatever, but like to get advice off something that important and scientific from someone that might not know what they're talking about kind of worries me a little bit.
I think that's what I was going to talk to you about as well, is that it's interesting because coaching is very different in a way to counselling. Obviously there's similarities, but it's a different service, isn't it? It's a different experience. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I think it is tricky because I think, I mean, I'm obviously not a counsellor or a therapist. And I think
at this rate, you'll probably be like, all three next week.
Gosh, you need something like, no. There are rules. I think in order to become a therapist or a counsellor, you do actually have to be registered in the UK, and you do need a degree, and you do need like 400 or 500 hours of like client work. So that's I don't have a degree. I'm not sure if that's on the cards just yet, but no, I think therapy and counselling obviously also has a valid place in helping couples who are struggling. I think sometimes therapy can be focused on working maybe a bit more about your past, and even if coaching does sort of address the things that you've done in your journey so far, you kind of, I mean, in life coaching in general, what it is just kind of like making a plan of action, and sort of visualizing your future goals, and trying to take a positive sort of stance to achieving that. I think that's a bit of what the mind body fertility specialists do work at with. But yeah, I think I possibly have a little bit of that, but also with a science base.
Yeah, and it's all kind of looking forward and helping you make those choices, because I think
exactly.
Not within fertility coaching, but in other areas of business and life, people talk about coaching and sometimes trained in coaching. And from what I know, it's kind of your job as a coach is to kind of assist that couple or that person make choices that are right for them, rather than telling people
exactly
what to do.
Yeah.
So you offer advice and share what's out there, but you're leading them to make their own choices. And there are so many choices that couples going through fertility have to face, isn't there?
Yeah. Definitely. So yeah, if couples come to me and they say that I've done this, and this, and like, what are my next steps? I can properly tell them, like, this is what you should do. This is who you need to see or who you need to talk to, and this is what you can do. If there are things you want to try before IVF, these are the things, and I'll have science-backed research to do them, but also kind of put a bit of the sort of life coaching spin on things, whereas it's something that the conclusion that you reach together, or more my clients possibly coming to that decision, because it does it kind of makes you feel a bit more positive about your journey, I think, when you know that you're making an educated decision based on all of the facts that you've got in front of you, and you have a plan, and that kind of makes you feel a little bit better about a journey that you don't really have a lot of control over. And especially in terms of, I mean, it's a long waiting game, and I think by making decisions, it kind of helps you have a plan, and then you've got things on a list that you can tick off, and it just kind of gives you that little bit more of a sense of control of
Definitely. And having that regular check-in with you as the fertility coach, you feel like you're making, like you said, getting to those milestones or reaching goals without actually...
You're making progress, yeah,
you're making progress without waiting all the time.
Yeah.
And you've got something achievable and manageable, and like you said, gives you a bit of hope and faith, I imagine.
Yeah. So could we potentially talk about a hypothetical client? Like, for example, if we were a client, how would we go about fertility coaching? And, you know, like, how does that process work? You know, like, because a lot of people are probably just hearing about fertility coaching for the first time, and they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
So we've kind of established what it kind of is or can be. But how would it kind of, in practice, a hypothetical, you could even use us as a dummy for a explanation, a kind of mock case study type of thing.
Mock case, sure. So the first thing that I would ask for is just a little bit more of your background and kind of get to know what you've done up until now, and try to work through what the game plan is for your next steps. And a few of the main aspects that we always try to look at is sort of lifestyle advice and tips, if there's anything that needs to be addressed on those side of things. We look at the emotional aspect and how you're coping with what has been going on, and if there are things that you feel like you need help with. Some people don't. I mean, I try to finish off my sessions with a little bit of a nice sort of calming meditation with some affirmations, and kind of, you know, make you feel a little bit better at the end. Because sometimes, honestly, like, there are tears in sessions when you're working through all of the emotions of like what you've been through so far. So it can be quite nice to kind of finish off with something like that. And not everyone is open to that, which is fine. And then when it comes to the sort of future plan, we will look at the history and see what next steps could be possible to take. I think if there's already sort of a plan to have IVF, or you've got something booked in the future, then there might not be a lot of coaching that I could help you with. If you've got a plan and you're sort of happy with what's going on, then I might not be the right person for you. But if you want someone by your side through the IVF treatment, then I'm the person for you.
So sort of to drill down, I'm sort of exploring all of these things as you're saying them. So to drill down, lifestyle choices. Now, our IVF fertility, our IVF troubles are male infertility, and I've got a low count. My brother has got a low count as well, and he had 2 tests done, both returned 0.1 and 0.4. So I can't. Basically, I think he was pretty much similar to me, and I had 0.1 and 0.3, like from the two times apart. So the Dr. D'Angelo, I think, told me that it was genetic. It's kind of like, that's your thing.
Likely to be. Yeah.
I still haven't seen the physiologist. They're not physiologists.
Urologist.
The urologist.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm like, okay, there's not much we can do. IVF is the thing we got to do. But I'm still working on lifestyle things, as in drinking less, trying to sleep more, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they're the main things that I can think of. But I wanted to ask you a question as well. I'm training for like an Ironman. So I'm running like maybe 2 or 3, maybe 2 20Ks a week, or 3 10Ks a week, riding 100 kilometers plus, like doing a lot of training. I was like swimming an hour a day, like
that's amazing. Well done.
But is it though? This is what I wanted to ask you, because
I've read that bike riding isn't so good, but I'm not sure. And you were like, no, it can't be.
The bike riding thing is more I think the position of saddle to testicles, to be frank. So I think it just depends on if you've got proper bicycle shorts and you've got a little bit of extra protection, it should be fine. I think hard endurance training, things like that, it shouldn't be a negative for your fertility, and it shouldn't be hurting your sperm sample. And I think if it is in fact genetic, which the conclusion is probably made based on the fact that both you and your brother have had it, so that's where they're basing it on.
I don't know if I told them about my brother.
You did.
Okay.
No. But so, as a scientist or an embryologist, someone involved in the team, would you take that information from the family as a? They would. I think in the initial consultation, you go through a lot of paperwork that has your sort of a patient history, and they would ask if family members have had trouble conceiving. Okay.
And you may or may not know the answer to that question, but if that was something that you knew that your brother had, then that's probably the conclusion that they've made. Because, I think when it comes to a sperm count, that is, there's not a lot that you can do to improve it drastically. So for the number that you have, I would assume the recommendation is to be doing ICSI when you go through your fertility treatment. What you would want is to have, I think our cutoff in the lab that I worked before was the WHO criteria was that it had to be above 15 in order to do conventional IVF fertilization. So
15,000 or 15?
Because we do it in a million. 15. So, and I was 0.1.
Mm-hmm. So that's 100,000. So what you have is suitable for ICSI, but the things that you would sort of, try to do to improve the count would not necessarily put you above 15 million. So that's probably
you'd have to do so much, because it's a huge increase, isn't it?
This kind of made me look into general health stuff, and I was my diet's not amazing, but I'm trying to eat enough protein. I don't get enough sleep, which I'm trying to work on as well. But I did a little bit of research, and I'm very, very careful who I listen to, because there's so many information on the internet. You can literally believe anyone. So I, read stuff that had clinical trials, double-blind, placebo-control tested stuff that proved. And it turns out that quite a lot of people are deficient in magnesium and vitamin D and zinc and stuff like that. So I'm really bad at sticking to the schedule with it, but I bought the recommended daily amount, and it's probably even worse for me because I'm doing all this training. I imagine it's hard to keep it up, but that's something I'm trying to work on, basically trying to have my nutrients and.
All of those supplements would be really good boost. I think the things that can be important for sperm health are things like folate, which is the natural form of folic acid, zinc, as you said, vitamin D, and we don't get enough because sunshine, right? I think that's true for the general population of the United Kingdom, and so antioxidants as well, because antioxidants are really important to block free radicals, which can have a negative impact on sperm quality. So again, that's not necessarily the count, but
my quality was good though. Yeah. The mobility and stuff was good, they said.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think that was okay.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I'm hoping we can they've scheduled an appointment for me to see the urologist, because I got a feeling because I got something checked out. I thought I had an issue before, and I had something checked out, and they ultrasounded me and stuff, and there was nothing to worry about. But it feels like I might have had some scar tissue or a cyst or something on.
They said when we get to the fertility clinic, they will probably consider you for urology, because you said about trauma as well. Because
I've had loads of bike accidents.
When Fuzz was a kid, he used to ride BMX as well. So,
teenager, young man.
Yeah.
But
still.
Yeah. Well, not quite, but I don't know. If lockdown comes in and I can't go anywhere, I might do.
Yeah.
But it's I just wonder how many people because then my brain started going down, what have I done? I've rode bikes, I've had, you know, crashes on bikes. So I've been in a car crash, and I started going through all of these things, like what if it's this and what if it's that. Is it possible to have like a blocked tube, like to have like scar tissue and just have a blocked tube or something? Or
it is, but that is also something that they would be able to pick up if you go see a urologist. I feel like that's something they could have picked up from a scan.
Yeah,
I think this is why it's amazing for your clients, because you have that kind of insight into fertility. So everyone who's coming to see you so far are really lucky. Kind of, Fuzz is like going down that road, what you can expect. So you kind of ask them what their history is and where they are and kind of what they're going through. And then how often would they speak to you, and kind of how long did they speak to you? When
It depends on them, really. I think I try to book in for a sort of the initial chat is free, but then we kind of go through, if they do want more of the IVF mentoring, then it is like 4 1-hour sessions that is alongside treatment. Otherwise we start off with a 1-hour session and go from there and see if they feel like they need more support after.
Yeah, that's good. I imagine as well, a lot of your clients are probably, are they coming to you kind of from a fresh perspective like us, like where they haven't had IVF yet, or are you more commonly seeing people who've had IVF and then they've had they haven't had success from a cycle? So I have had, I guess it's a mixed bag actually, because I think actually most of the people who've been in touch recently have had 1 or 2 failed cycles and wanted to evaluate a little bit about what had happened in the previous cycles and see if there were any steps that they could take to prepare themselves for the next one. And I think the 2 most recent ones, I think, were like, this upcoming cycle is going to be our last. So we want to put like everything into it. Like, what are the things that we can do to make sure that, you know, that egg quality is good, that sperm quality is good, and that we're in the right headspace. But no, equally, I think one of my first clients was a first time IVF patient, and that's kind of what spurred me on a bit more. Yeah. I guess people and clients coming to you from that perspective have a little bit of the fear of the unknown. I mean, like Fuzz said in previous episodes, I read and listen.
I don't though. Like I want to, but I stop myself because I know that you can find wherever you want. You just find confirmation bias about anything.
Yeah, we're opposite ends of the spectrum, so I want to know what to expect, and I look.
But I kind of feel like you're causing yourself problems sometimes.
Yeah, and so people would like to come and see you because maybe they're interested in finding out what to expect and what they can, how they can prepare.
And I think while I can explain that to them, I simultaneously try to bring them back to the present and say that, you know, it's good to be prepared for the things that are happening in the future. But if it becomes a bit obsessive, or if it becomes if it adds more anxiety and stress, then we need to work on kind of focusing on what's going on right now. So there are good aspects to preparing yourself and knowing what's going to happen. But if it is giving you, you know, keeping you awake at night, or if it's giving you more anxiety about, you know, what's happening, then it would probably be good to maybe practice some mindfulness techniques. And
the stress of like doing it all and being so pressured with it could probably raise your blood pressure, I imagine, and like just put you in this place where you're like stressed. Your body's I mean, well, that's a question. You're the expert. Is it possible to be so, you know, is it like medically, like obviously you said, is it medically possible to be so amped up and worried about doing everything perfectly that you can actually cause your body stress, and then that has a negative effect on everything?
So I think, I listened to a really good talk at the latest sort of conference, which was virtual. But I think one thing that we need to be clear on is that infertility and an infertility diagnosis causes stress, and being stressed is not going to make you infertile. But being stressed may lead you to maybe not so good coping strategies. So there are things that we do when we are stressed that might be bad for your fertility. So it's kind of an indirect effect. So for example,
people might drink more.
So you can sit in a room.
People might drink more. People might smoke cigarettes, which cigarettes is one of the biggest things that we know to have a negative impact on both male and female fertility. Sleep is definitely a really big one. And because if you're taking magnesium, hopefully that will help you, because that is a really good.
I really don't sleep a lot, literally. Like, I don't. I've never slept enough.
Has always had issues.
Well, if you've
with
never,
sleep, haven't you?
if you've never done it, then I don't know. Do you feel tired?
I've got a weird, like, I did a lot of night shifts and night work and stuff. I left school when I was 16 and just went off and worked night shifts and, you know, this working from 6 in the evening till 2 in the morning or whatever. And then I just did that for years, and I've always been a night person. And I don't know, like sometimes I think maybe I'm just a night person. I've been up early for the last week. If I can jump in a pool straight away in the morning and like swim for an hour, I'm up and I'm knackered by the time I go to bed. But COVID's come along and
you've been good for a few weeks. I think the problem is with being a night walker and a day sleeper is that often in the day everyone else is awake. So for example, in the summer you need the windows open because it's hot, so then you get disturbed by the noise, so that means your quality of sleep in the day isn't always as good.
And I've got bad habits as well, like I'm, you know, a self-employed person. I'm always doing something. I find it hard to switch off because I'm always like, I've got to do that, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do that. And then by the time I do like try and wind down and go to sleep, it's late, and then I go, I'll have a drink because it'll make me tired, and then it doesn't. And then like so then you end up getting no sleep, and it's even worse because you've had a couple of drinks,
and then you're stressed because you're not sleeping.
So anyway, like I try my best to not do that.
It's such a normal thing though, kind of getting into that cycle, and it's hard to break the habit, but it's completely normal.
I think the in vogue thing is
but it's normal.
I think the in vogue thing is calling it sleep hygiene. So it's like you've already adopted some of it, like having a bath before you go to bed kind of winds you down.
That's another one. Becky, so
as long as it's not too hot.
So I have not had a bath. I have a bath pretty much every day, and I haven't had a bath for like the last week. And I've noticed, or maybe I'm just putting two things together, it's in my head, but like I've noticed I'm really sore because I'm doing all this training, but I'm not having a bath every day. And Becky has asked me not to have baths as much, and I'm like, but if I don't have baths, I'll be stressed and I won't sleep very well.
It's because I know that the temperature of the baths that you have are very hot, and you're in there for a long time, so you're cooking them. I don't want you to cook your sperm.
There you go.
Boiling a lobster hot.
Please let me have baths. No, not allowed.
No. I think. Oh gosh. I think as long as it's not too hot, you should be fine.
We need a ducky thermometer.
You do. No, honestly, if you say you're in there for a long time, I'm sure by the time you get out, it's not as hot.
Yeah, the water cools down. You only get the benefit of the hot. You only get the benefit of the heat on your muscles for the first bit. And I use magnesium salts because it's quite easy to absorb for your skin, rather than
a little bit of lavender essential oils to kind of get you.
It works. I literally I love it. I have candles. I literally, because I'm always around screens and lights and stuff, so I dim stuff and I have like non-screen lights going on.
I think that sounds really lovely. Actually, I think I think maybe we should vote on letting Fuzz have a bath.
Thank you.
I think we should for the sleep as well. I think overall, like we say, we're not going to improve your count, so.
Well, this is what I mean.
Not easily.
You're not boiling them. It's okay.
Well, we don't know. We literally don't know. We could ask, if we Googled that, that there would be about 20 different pages for each
Don't
thing.
Google that. Oh God.
So I think that
Google's not always your friend.
Yeah.
it's never anyone's friend, I don't think.
Always seek advice from professionals like yourself.
Have you thought about starting a YouTube channel?
I hadn't. I don't.
think-
I'm not sure if that would be useful to people.
Well, think about it this way. Like it's kind of topical because we watched. I don't know if you've seen it, but the documentary called The Social Dilemma.
Oh, it's on our list. I'm kind of scared to watch it.
Do it on a day do it. Yeah, it's worth watching. It's important. It's really important to watch. But basically, it just confirms what I already thought anyway. Like, there's so much misinformation around that if you're an expert and you know what you're talking about, I kind of feel like you almost have an obligation to get on the internet and tell people. Like, but in a way where you could educate. I don't know. From a business point of view, I guess you don't want to just coach everyone for free because it takes a lot of time and stuff. But there could be a way where you could give people blanket, generic, myth busting type stuff.
True.
And then tell people how you could tailor it to them. It could work well in the misinformation aspect, kind of helping quash that, but also help you with your business as well.
It is a good idea. I think not the only problem. One of the problems would be a lot of science is debated as well. Yeah, exactly. So there are methods and tools and things that we use in the lab, which
other labs or countries might not do.
Exactly. And the HFEA introduced something really good, actually, because they've got like a traffic light system on their website where all of the add-ons are listed, because a lot of clinics would sort of advertise for certain add-ons and be like, oh, we've got this culture media, we've got this time-lapse incubation system. It's amazing. Come to us. And then the HFEA kind of put a stop to that because all of these add-ons cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the point is not to kind of reel in clients based on what you can sell them. We're trying to help them have babies. So they've introduced a traffic light system where everything is sort of graded based on the scientific evidence. And I think they even said that IVF in itself is not like rated green because it is disputed itself in places. So it's as much as it would be, useful to some to maybe be on YouTube, I think there would be a lot of people that just, if they didn't believe it, they would argue it anyway.
You just get an army of people saying that you were like hired by Bill Gates and you're trying to take over the world. And
exactly. Yeah. That is exactly. Yeah. I don't think I could put myself through that.
Yeah. I think the other thing as well is, like you said, not all medicine and clinical procedures are necessarily verified or well,
they
correct.
have to be passed to be given this treatment.
But there's research, isn't there? So some research can always be disproved, and procedures can also always be reviewed and changed.
Exactly.
But also there's that whole idea of like a textbook person that people and procedures are based on, isn't there? And every person is different, so normal or expected for some people is not going to be normal for someone else.
Exactly.
So aspect too.
Would you say that we are kind of like one of the more closed book type scenarios because of the male factor? Because you said there's not much I can do about the count and stuff, Whereas like with other aspects of infertility, there might be a lot of things that you could look into and do and prepare for and stuff.
Do you mean lifestyle wise?
Well, whatever. I mean, because there's not much I can do. Like, so, I mean, is it? Do you think it's more aimed at so if there was women's infertility, female, whatever you call it, like the other way around.
A female factor.
A female factor, yeah. Would that be? Does that have more stuff to get into to affect and stuff? You know.
Okay, so in terms of, there are also different types of male factor infertility. So I think for you specifically, like I wouldn't call you closed book, but I think there are things that you can do that are, you know, fertility friendly. I don't think you should, you know, drink and smoke every day because there's nothing you can do about it in that sense. But there are things where if motility isn't sort of as high as you'd like it to be, there are things that you can do to help motility or even the morphology. So they're just because it's sort of, they're just different types of male factor infertility and different things that you can do in that sense. I think the count in itself, you might not be able to bounce it up to having like conventional IVF, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep leading a healthy lifestyle. And for female factor infertility, in terms of lifestyle advice and tips, it depends on what type of diagnosis there is, and sometimes there isn't a clear one. So in general, you just want to eat fertility friendly foods, do fertility friendly things.
I think as well, there's never really a closed book because even if you do have a diagnosis and there's little that you can do to change your situation, when you actually get to treatment, if you're not successful, then there's other things to consider that people might approach you about, like if they consider egg donation or sperm donation or adoption or surrogacy, all those kind of things. They're kind of topics and things that might come up, or reasons why people might seek help from yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are just many aspects of fertility and infertility that people might feel that they need help with, or just want someone to talk to, because you guys have been amazing with your podcast and you've been very open about things, but I think a lot of people feel isolated because they don't feel like they're able to talk about it openly, and that's one of the biggest things that I see with most of my clients is that a lot of the time they're happy that they have someone to talk to.
They can always drop us a message and talk to us. Yeah,
we always, I kind of feel like perhaps it could be easier for us because we're not actually doing it yet. I mean, obviously we're going through the motions and we've been seen to by different people, but we're not actually experiencing any of those procedures yet. So maybe that's what makes it that bit easier for us, possibly. Yeah.
So for anyone that's listening who's thinking, I would like a fertility coach, this sounds amazing. It can help me with all the things that I don't know about. I can ask all the questions and be prepared. And not just for like the actual science stuff and the physiology side of things, but to sort of have someone to guide you through like what happens when, without it being a scary thing, without it being overwhelming, just a very grounded but optimistic kind of looking forward perspective on what could happen and wherever. Like I think I know what a fertility coach is now.
Good. I hope everyone who's listening knows as well.
Yeah, but my point
I do appreciate that description, though. That was really nice. Thank you.
Well done, Fuzz.
And if you're a listener that appeals to, then you can go and chat and find out all the information over at...
Where can they find you, Sandy?
I am at Sandy Christiansen _ on
which we will
Instagram.
Put on the screen and in the description, because if anyone's like me...
Oh, my surname is dreadful. Sorry, that's the Scandi.
It's lovely.
But also on sandychristiansen.com. So that has a little bit more, that's my website, that has a bit more details about sessions and things like that. And there's contact forms, email addresses, numbers, however you want.
So if you're interested in any of the stuff that we talked about, basically go over to the website and drop Sandy a message.
Yeah. And before you go, Sandy, can I ask you a cheeky question that I asked you about when we talked before?
Sure.
When people talk about embryos and they grade them, what is that? Because that's what I've noticed on Instagram lately, that people have had egg transfer and they're like, yay, this many fertilized. And I understand that if they fertilize, that means that it's an embryo now. But what does it mean with like all the letters and the numbers? What is that?
So it depends on which day an embryo would be transferred. I think most of the ones that I've been seeing on Instagram most recently have been blastocysts. And the most used system to grade them is the Gardner system, where the first number is how expanded the blastocyst is. So you would, for example, see a 4, and that means that it's a fully expanded blastocyst. 5 means that it's starting to hatch out of its zona, and 6 means that it's fully hatched. And then the letter combination that's next to it stands for how the trophectoderm and how the inner cell mass are graded. And so your inner cell mass is, if the embryo implants successfully, that's what turns into the baby, and the trophectoderm is what helps create the placenta. So A is your top scoring for both. So a 4AA, for example, would be a fully expanded blastocyst with top scoring inner cell mass and top scoring trophectoderm cells. So that's what we've seen a lot of. I think I did promise you that I would draw one, so I'm just going to try to do that quickly.
That sounds cool.
On my paper here.
I'm glad I know what that means. That was bugging me forever.
I think it's hilarious when they talked about us hatching. I don't know if you think of real eggs.
Yeah, wow.
Well, they are kind of. So the trophectoderm cells are literally like these ones that
Hang
form.
On, if you stay there for a sec, I'm just going to turn us off because our cameras are acting.
This is my very, very rubbish drawing of a blastocyst.
There we go. So you are full screen.
Sure. So the trophectoderm cells are these ones. That's sort of that line the blastocyst wall. So I've tried to draw the zona, which is the shell, which is sort of all the way around. So these trophectoderm cells, this is obviously 2D, but they go all the way around. So they're in the front and they're behind, and it kind of creates like a cobblestone effect. And this is your inner cell mass, which you want nice and tight and compact, and that's what would give you an A. And the more there are of these, that would give you a grade A as well.
Cool.
And one thing that is worthy noting is that your top quality blastocyst, like that of 4AA, has very good chances of implanting, but at the same time we can't guarantee the genetic status of it, so it might not be fully chromosomally normal. And equally, something that is a bit poorer quality, like a 4cc, might be completely euploid normal and implant successfully and into the baby. So
don't read too much into the grading.
Let the scientists do their thing.
Yeah. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Sandy.
Yeah, no worries.
That's one thing that's been on my mind, being like, oh, I don't know about that. And I do find science is really cool, and I used to love that part of biology where you could draw cells and stuff. So I like that.
One, I actually have to say the previous clinic that I worked at was possibly my favorite, because we were 100% time lapse. So we had incubators with the built-in sort of cameras that took pictures of the embryos like every 10 minutes of their development. So we would sit at a computer. We didn't get the embryos out of the incubator. We didn't have to take it over to a microscope. We would just sit at a computer, and then we could scroll through the time lapse to like any cell division and like jot down exactly what was happening, if the cells were even or not, and what timings. Timing is quite important in development as well. So those are the aspects that we look at. Yeah.
It's literally like that's the coolest thing about all of this IVF stuff. I just think like you're watching like miracles happen. Like the only reason that we ever see this in real life is whether it's animal, well, we're all animal, but whether it's human or another animal, you don't get to see it unless you do IVF, because it's all internal and it's never out there. So it's a really special thing to be able to see.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Thanks so much, Sandy. It's been awesome to talk to you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
Yeah. And go and check Sandy out. Even if you're not interested necessarily at the moment at doing fertility coaching, go and follow her on Instagram, because you never know when you might need a bit of help.
And first calls are always free, so don't hesitate. Just get in touch. Hopefully I can
come and say hi to Sandy. Cool.
Cool.
Oh, brilliant.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Talk to you
you.
soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
So, Fuzz, are you completely convinced now?
Well, I said at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
I wasn't like super unconvinced. I just thought it was a bit unusual, the term. And there are a lot of people that will try and, aside out of this, you got to be skeptical of everything. But I was really interested in what was said, and I think there's a really good value to having someone like that. But on top of that, the science that she has is what really sold me.
Yeah.
Because someone could tell you all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And it might help you feel better, but it might not actually be scientifically what is going on.
Yeah.
So it's like with this, you're covered on all bases.
I think it's really interesting. We could probably have like loads of episodes just chatting to Sandy about the whole process and embryology and everything like that, because it was so interesting, and I was really glad to have the kind of grading explained to me. And it's definitely an interesting angle to be coming from for her and for her clients, to have that scientific background. So
she talked
really
it out.
cool.
It was interesting talking about like the different procedures, different clinics and stuff. At the same time, I kind of myself think I'm better off not knowing all of that.
Yeah.
But obviously, that's just I don't mind dipping into it and stuff like that. But I like having someone that knows what they're talking about to explain it to me rather than read about it, because when you read forums and things and like, I think it can get quite messy quite quick. You can be misled. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what's so awesome about
Sandy,
sorry. Because she's got a second name which sounds like a first name. I got confused.
Maybe.
Christiansen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a first name.
Yeah. Well, what she was saying was like, she often helps people stay in the now and practice mindfulness.
She keeps people grounded, which is kind of, you could, because the thing that I thought of afterwards was like, if you're paying someone to tell you stuff, I mean, obviously, whether it's true or not, if you go somewhere and they tell you stuff and it makes you feel better when you leave, you could get addicted to that, can you?
Yeah.
So, and say someone was not very, say there was someone out there that was like a bit untrustworthy or whatever, then it could be really weird. So I like knowing that Sandy is, an embryologist, has the science behind it.
Yeah.
And she's very, very, very reserved in like promoting herself, which is like an admirable thing, really. Like she probably could push herself a little bit more, because she's very aware that, she doesn't want to trick people into.
She's not trying to trick people or pitch anything or sell anything. She's
trying to do a job that has got real value.
Yeah.
But understands the fragility of it all.
Yeah.
And I think that's needed.
Yeah. She's definitely got like a sensitivity about her and that scientific background too, which is really cool. And when we were speaking to her,
and I'm allowed baths still.
Yeah. Woohoo. And we were speaking to her a bit after, and she's got like a really global mindset, because she's traveled so far and been so many places, which is really cool. So I like that. I think we've probably got a lot in common with her, which is nice. So good to chat.
Both Scandinavian.
Yeah.
Both speak 3 languages.
Yeah, we are. Not.
Both embryologists.
You are kind of Scandinavian, Norwegian genetics, haven't you?
I don't know, pretty watered down.
Yeah, but via your granddad,
pedigree. if I was a dog and I was trying to enter crafts in Norway, they'd be like, "What the hell is this? What's it? This is just a Welsh dog with loads of Norwegian stickers on him." Like, get this out of here.
Oh, I'd feel sorry for you if you were that dog.
Yeah, and I'd just go into the mutts category.
Mongrels.
Mutts.
Heinz 57.
And then, sweep up, clean up, take all the mud off. Get my own dog food deal.
What would your skill be? Wagging your tail.
Come on, Becky. Be original. Come on.
Be nice, original.
I don't know. I'd write Sudoku or something.
A dog that plays Sudoku.
If there was a good... I don't know. I'm being silly, obviously.
We like silly. Yeah. In other news this week,
Anyway.
in fact today, one of my kids said to me today, if you like kids so much, why don't you just get a baby?
I like that about kids. They're so, like...
It was the one that
naive,
said
innit?
to me,
They're just like...
Mrs. Chukas, why are you so scruffy? So that was eventful. So we've got a real life Kathy in my classroom, as if there aren't enough of them in the world. And that is a wrap of episode 20. I hope you enjoyed listening, and we'll see you next week.